Welcome to Light in the Shadow. I'm Dana Kenyon, and it's my aim to encourage, support, and equip women to live life under the shadow of God's wing. On this channel, I'll be bringing you videos of women who are doing just that. I hope their stories will help you find your path in His kingdom. Under His shadow is where we can walk in His protection, receive His provision, and rest in His care. Together, we will be light under the shadow of His wing. Today on Light in the Shadow, we have part 2 of the story of Mercy Market with Denise Hammer. Check out their website and order beautiful handmade products for yourself or your loved ones. Better yet, contact Denise or Sherry and have them send you a box of products that you can sell at your church, at craft fairs, or at other community events. You can be instrumental in helping women out of red light districts, allowing them to stay united with their children. Help incarcerated women be able to afford more than just the basic needs, and prevent at-risk children from being sold into sex trafficking. Help these most vulnerable people to hear and see the gospel in the lives of those who work directly with them and as partners with Mercy Market. At the end of this episode, you will have a chance to win one of 3 gifts from Mercy Market. Listen to the rest of the story and then be sure to participate. Yes, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was.
The blessing of just being able to say, okay, here, let me
Yeah,
help.
yeah,
Because it was a horrible global, crisis.
yeah.
So what a wonderful thing to be able to do. With your team of 3 people, you and the other 2, you ended up making one trip to 3 different countries, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. What did you do during that trip? What did that involve?
That was the first international trip that the 3 of us were able to make together. And we were able to go to Nightlight. That is a group that's working with women in the red light district in Bangkok. Excuse me. We went to Hill Tribes in northern Thailand, where that was a community of young people where they were kind of protecting them from being trafficked, as is Remember New. Both of those groups exist to create a safe environment so that kids that would have been at the risk of being trafficked now are being cared for. It's not really an orphanage because sometimes they have parents, sometimes they have other family members that would care for them, but they would be very vulnerable to someone coming in and offering that guardian money, or feeling the pressure to go make money for that family. So these communities, Remember New and Hill Tribes, we got to visit them, and those were both protecting girls and boys from being trafficked. Then we also went to Comic Crafts, where my apron came from.
Yeah.
And got to go out into the village and see the women in the village and their kids all around, and see them doing this teeny tiny little hand stitch that I could never do, and see how they had the power to negotiate their wages with the Comic Craft office, and the dignity that was given to them because they were producing quality work with their hands and caring for their families. There's such a dignity that comes with that. And then we also were in Cambodia and got to see the Moringa soap and oil ministry.
And that's one of the things that you still currently sell?
Yes. And of those, we still sell 4 out of those 5 items. Remember New is a little different. Whenever you are talking about working with an organization that's helping children, of course, the children aren't making the product. That would get into slave labor of a different kind. Sure. But so in that case, if any of you have ever seen our scarves that come from Thailand, the worker that we deal with goes into the marketplace, buys the scarves, and then we pay what they have figured as a fair wage and helps their ministry. And then so we're helping their ministry, but that's one of the few times where the people that we're helping aren't actually the ones that are making the product.
Okay.
But yeah, so we sell their scarves, we sell nightlight jewelry, soap and oil from Cambodia, a lot of kitchen and purses and those kind of things from Comic Crafts. So we're still partnering with them.
So so you were there and you were witnessing some of these things. Were you able to see some of the conditions that the women were living in or the children were living in?
The most eye-opening one was when we went into the red light district in Bangkok. And so Nightlight had started as, and this is what they still do, there's thousands and literally thousands and thousands of young men and women employed in the sex industry in this red light district, in the bars, in the dancing, in this. And Nightlight goes into these various places, respectful of what that business asks them. You know, they have figured out how they can build relationships with individuals within that business. And so we sat in that bar and observed some of the degrading experience. Well, I don't know how to describe it. There was dancing going on, and they all had a number.
Oh,
And then what happens after the number, of course, we're not seeing. I mean, but just the fact that they were numbered, they were treated like cattle.
ugh.
And it was sickening. Now, I mean, we were in a bar, but we're in a strip club necessarily. And I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't make it sound like we were witnessing something that were part of the degradation, but we were seeing enough to know that this was so degrading to these girls, to these women.
Yes.
Then you would buy them a pop, the ones that it wasn't their turn to be dancing, and sit and talk to them. And eventually Nightlight gals would ask them why they're doing that and did they want to be doing that. And almost always it was financial. I have a child I don't know how to take care of. My parents back home expect me to send money back to them. I don't have any education. Some have been trafficked. There's different kinds of sexual exploitation. Some are stolen. Some are much more. I don't know the figures, but are in situations under deception. We'll give you a good job. We'll give you and then it's not that. And then there's some like these girls that were in the red light district. That's why we could just walk in. You can't just walk into a brothel,
Right.
but we could walk into these establishments and talk to them. But they're there because of this desperate financial situation that they don't know how to get out of.
Yeah.
And so then they are offered a job in jewelry making.
Nice.
And that's how Nightlight would rescue these girls. Now there were some that they actually rescued and got back home to Africa or somewhere, but a lot of them were just young village girls from 3 hours away or whatever. And some stories are heartbreaking, as in the families like, well, so-and-so's daughter's sending back enough money to build them a nice house. Why don't you go down there and do what she's doing so we can have a nice house? In a lot of their culture, the guys are expected, sons are expected to care for their families spiritually. So they'll become monks for a while and they'll do all this religious stuff so that their parents have a good afterlife, but their daughters are expected to care for them financially. Yeah, but it was all this financial component that had driven them to be where they were. And where they were was so degrading, was so heartbreaking to watch. And to watch women being degraded, being treated as objects, being treated as cattle, and being in that situation because they knew of no other way to provide for some themselves and some loved one that it was their responsibility to care for. And so Nightlight has come in to offer them another way. And that's also what Starfish is doing. One of our groups we partner with now, they're in a different country that we haven't been able to go to yet, and maybe not because of the need for them to be more secretive, private, less on the radar. But that's what a lot of the jewelry making companies are doing, offering women a way out.
Yes. Yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
They can offer something like that. You also made a trip to Calcutta. You
Yeah,
talked.
so that's the other trip that the three of us got to make. And then the next time then COVID hit, and we, it costs a lot of money to go these countries, and we're not trying to take any money out of what would go to the women and the artisans that we're supporting. So we don't just do this, we don't write that into the cost of your jewelry, and so we were, and we all had families, and so we had intended to go again. We're starting to look towards a couple places one of the times we were hoping to go to some countries where that then politically became unstable, and but the so we haven't been able to go back anywhere, but we did get to go to India, and in that case we just went to one city and we parked there, and we always have contacts. We're never just like popping ourselves into some risky situation or unknown situation. We always have contacts we're working with. But so when we gave the taxi driver the address, and our contact told us, now when you give the taxi driver the address to where we want you to drop, we want you to be, and he's gonna not believe you because no tourists come to this area.
Yeah.
So the ministry that we went to and where we stayed was right on the edge of the red light district in Calcutta.
Yeah.
And very, very non-touristy. And this is where the ministries are located. And we were able to meet with 3 different groups. One of the groups at the time was called Preset, and that's who we get our t-shirts from.
Okay.
And another group was Sari Bari, and they are the ones that make purses and items out of recycled saris. And then we also met with Love Calcutta Art, and they do journals and things like that. But all of these 3 groups all work with women that have been rescued or would be vulnerable to being part of the red light district. And we could stand on the top of our building where we were staying and look out and see the houses that were within the red light district. We were that close. Again, the poverty, the noise, the filth of the places that we were at, and knowing that this is where people spent their lives.
Yeah. You also talked to me about one man in particular who was working there in Calcutta. Tell me the huge discrepancy in how he was raised and where he was when you saw him.
So we were meeting each of these organizations and getting to know them a little bit. And we met when we went up the stairs and went down the alley and through the door and up the stairs. And we get up to the office of Sari Bari, and a young guy, maybe in his 20s, he's helping do the office work and part of that component of it. And he told his journey, and he was from a farm in Indiana. And as I thought about the contrast between, because I'm from a town, I have 4 kids, I know what noise is, but I was so impacted by the noise and the crowdedness. I mean, the crowds walking down a street, getting onto public transportation, wherever you went, you were just crowded, and it was noisy. I'm sorry I keep saying that word, but and here this young man had left the serenity, the peacefulness, the privacy, the cleanliness of the comfort. We have not even talked about the heat at 3 a.m, but all of the comfort of his home to follow the Lord's call, to do what he could to save individuals who were being trafficked and were being so mistreated, so degraded. And so that's always been kind of a really a testimony to me. I mean, I was there for a week, thought I was going to die some days, like I can't do this another hour. And here he was. And there was another couple that had moved from Australia or somewhere like that, and they purposely chose not to have air conditioning. I'm telling you, I just am amazed at the sacrifices that some people make. God asked them to do something and they say yes. And one day he came, and I don't know if he was dripping wet or what, sweaty or something. And one of the workers said, well, why are you so hot? Or I don't know how the conversation came up. And he said, well, I don't have air conditioning. You don't have air conditioning. I don't have air conditioning. And just that willingness to suffer a little bit. I mean, we can't even begin to suffer like these women have, but even to participate a little bit in their suffering, to move into their neighborhoods. Isn't that what Jesus did? He dwelt among us. He moved into our neighborhoods, but willing to make some of those sacrifices is a continual. When I think of it, I am just really blown away by their example.
Yeah. Denise, would you talk to our listeners a little bit and encourage them? The ones who are trying to figure out what their meaning and purpose is in God's kingdom, talk to them. Talk to the women who are already in ministry, and maybe they don't think that it really matters that much. What do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, I sure would hate to be seen as somebody who has this all figured out. I have my days when I wake up in the morning and think, what in the world am I doing with my life? Am I wasting my life? Yeah. I have good health. I have resources. I have so much, Lord. Am I wasting my life? So I sure wouldn't want to be seen as someone who doesn't deal with that. And to answer that question, then I guess I come back to, is there anything you called me to do that I refused to do? Yeah. If so, then I need to start right there and repent and whatever. I need to deal with that. If the answer is no, in my heart of hearts, Lord, I feel like I am yielded to you. So that would be the first one. If I refuse to do anything you called me to do, the second thing would be, do I consistently put myself in a place where you could speak to me? Yeah. Am I in your word? Am I, if something, listen in a sermon or in a conversation, do I have accountable friendships? Am I in a Bible study group with some women that I could say, man, I'm thinking about this. Do you think maybe God's talking to me about that? Am I putting myself in a place where I could hear God say, I want you to do this? Yeah. Yeah. Another thing might be to say, am I boxing in? Am I limiting how I think God uses people? You and I had talked, Dana, about the timing of this, and how I was in my mid-50s when it was just all starting to really click. I was reading verses like how God said that not just did it matter to him, but that if you didn't care for the poor and needy, he regarded it as sin. Like, oh my goodness, I never heard that you could be sinning by not meeting the physical needs of someone. Or, the kind of famous passage is Jesus saying, whatever you did for me, you did for the least of these. And we get our phrase, the least of these. But man, I looked at that kind of with new eyes and thought, oh my goodness, if Jesus was hungry, if Jesus walked into my house today and was hungry, I'd mortgage my house to feed him. Yeah. I mean, what would most of your listeners, we would do everything we could if the tangible Jesus was tangibly hungry. And he says, whatever you do to the least of those, you're doing to me. And that is so impacting. Yeah. So that doesn't mean then that everybody mortgages their house or quits their day job or does these other things that maybe look bigger and more significant. Many times, God, you are meeting God's heart for the least of these when you're caring for your elderly mother, when you're working at a crisis pregnancy center, when you're working at my mom was working at the rescue mission when she was like 75. When you're caring, the least of these can mean so many things. Yeah. And are we saying, well, God, because I'm not going overseas, I'm not, doing this big thing, then it doesn't really count. And that's where I think we have to be really careful that we're not judging the place that God has us, that one looks more exciting, one looks, I had somebody say, oh, must be exciting. I'm telling you, balancing your checkbook isn't exciting. Unboxing boxes and numbering how many lambs you got, stuffed animals, and how much did it cost, and did you pay them yet, and what's the tax on that? And it's not exciting, but I'm grateful that I get to do it. I am thrilled that I get to do this.
Yes.
But there are other women who are caring for handicapped individuals that are doing things that God has not called me to do, but he sees, working with middle school teenagers. There are so many ways that we can care for the least of these, care for the heart of God, be faithful to the calling that he has called us to, and not compare our ministry to others. And yet, if there is that unrest, like, am I doing what you want me to do? To just keep saying, Lord, am I listening?
Yeah.
And am I obeying what you've called me to?
You talked about what God required of us. You talked about the little boy with the 5 loaves.
This is one of my favorite kingdom principles. Someday, if I ever write a book, maybe I'll write it on my favorite kingdom principle. This is one of my favorite kingdom principles, that we give what we have.
Yes.
And that little boy had 5 loaves and 2 fish. And God said, would you give it to me? He didn't say, well, why? What are you going to do with it? It's not enough. It's not enough. And it's so easy to say, it's not enough. It's my one day a week that I dedicate to Mercy Market, and then, fragments throughout the rest of the week. And I go here once in a while and I go, is it enough? Am I doing enough? It's not enough to meet this huge need. But that wasn't part of the equation or the question. The little boy was just asked to give what he had. He gave what he had, and then Jesus did what he wanted to do with it. And he did great things with it. But Jesus did what he wanted to do with what the boy had. And I just love that we can say, Lord, at this stage in my life, at this stage in my day, at this, where I'm at, because of all my other family dynamics or financial limitations, or I'm going to give you what I have. And believe that it's enough, and believe that God will use it and bless it. Yeah. Even if it looks so different than it did 10 years ago in your own life, or it looks different than what other people are doing. Yes.
Yes. And we receive joy, from them, the very, God just allowing us to be part of some of these things. Sometimes we think we're not giving enough, but God is the one who really is doing the eternal work in these things. And so we give our 5 loaves and our 2 fish, and then we get to sit back and watch him multiply. We get to sit back and watch him, bless other people through those little bitty offerings. So and
then there's times when you don't get to see it, where where you don't know if it's making any difference. And I think that's the hardest time to be faithful. Mm-hmm. To say, Lord, this is what I believe you called me to, and it doesn't seem like thousands are being fed,
Right.
But I am giving you what I know to give you, and I'm gonna just believe that if you wanted me to do something else, you'd show me. And so I'm going to take joy in this. And there is great joy in doing what you believe he's called you to do.
Absolutely.
And trusting his timing. We had talked about that a little bit, that if I had all these verses come to me and read these books and had all this input earlier in my life, when I had 4 kids at home and I felt really called to parenting, and all that was part of my life then, maybe I would have just been been content, but I would have done something different, maybe just given money, or, I couldn't have done the Mercy Market thing. Or if it was later on, then there's other factors, but I can see how that the timing of God was perfect for me and this ministry, and to trust him then with the future timing. Because I won't always be doing this. And do I trust that then through every season of my life, do I really trust that God will be faithful? One of my favorite songs right now is All My Life You Have Been Faithful. I always cry when I say this. All my life you have been so, so good, with every breath that I'm able.
I will sing of the mercy of the Lord. Yeah.
The goodness of God. Yeah.
The goodness.
Every season, I will sing of the goodness of
Amen. I wanted to touch on just one more little thing.
Okay.
And it's not a little thing. You mentioned the ministry called Starfish.
Oh,
Would you share with our reader or listeners
mhm.
about the story of the starfish and why that's impacted you so much?
I will. Starfish is one of the organizations that we have the privilege of partnering with. I've never gotten to see them, and but they are working with women that they have rescued from red light districts. They get their name from a parable that maybe many people are familiar with, but it never loses its impact for me. And the parable is that there was a little boy on a beach, and the tide has come in and washed a whole bunch of starfish up away from the water, and they'll die if they're left there in the sand and the heat. And so he is standing there walking and throwing one by one the starfish back into the water. And a gentleman walks by and, asks him what he's doing. And the little boy tells him, and the guy says, well, there's so many starfish, you'll never be able to save them all. It doesn't, it won't matter to them all. But the little boy said, but it matters to this one.
Yes.
It matters to this one. And so I feel really humbled and that God would allow us to help one and one and one more. And doesn't look like we're ever going to be a world vision. The first item on your Facebook, on your Google search for international products, Mercy Market's probably not going to be the one that pops up. We're probably not going to be $1 million. And it's easy to just then minimize what you're doing and go back to that doesn't matter, but it matters to that one.
Yeah.
And so it is a joy to be faithful to that. And I know that for your women that are watching, many of them are being faithful to those individual ones, those one lives that they're impacting, and it matters to them and it matters to God. Mercy matters,
Yes.
Whatever form that it's in. He has called us to act justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with him. That's our call as God followers. And this is how we get to do that.
Amen. Well, it has been a joy and a blessing to hear your story today, to listen to how you're throwing one starfish at a time back in, and mattering to God. It's huge. And I thank you for sharing your time and your story with us. And I wanted to say, and I know that we're at the end of the video, for those listeners who are still watching this at the end of the video, I have a little surprise today, because Under the Shadow Ministries is purchasing 3 items from Mercy Market online store, and we're going to be giving those away as giveaways. If you would make a comment under this video and let me know what your favorite part of this video is. 3 people, the first 3 people that respond will get these items. Denise, thank you again so much, and it has been a privilege to talk to you today.
Thanks, Dana. It's been a joy for me as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Light in the Shadow. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can watch future videos. God bless.